What's your level of involvement when one of your companies is faced with an ethical dilemma?
We let our managers run their businesses, and we've got some terrific managers, not only in terms of ability, but I would say that what we have seen of the ethical standards of our managers and has been extraordinary over the years. That doesn't mean there aren't slip-ups here or there, but taken as a group over decades, I think that I'm very happy, in effect, turning over the keys not only to the financial performance of the business, but in terms of how they behave. And I would say that I think you're quite wrong in terms of Fruit of the Loom's operations are conducted in the absolutely terrific standards. John Holland's here. I'd be glad to have you meet with him later. But we're proud of our business and how they operate. We do not give them elaborate guidelines. I write them a letter every 2 years, roughly, and I ask them to send me a letter telling them who they think should be the successor if anything happened to them that night. I keep those letters around. Fortunately, they don't come into play very often. But I also tell them we've got all the money we need. It's nice to have more money, but we're not going to lack for money at Berkshire Hathaway. We don't have a shred of reputation more than we need, and we never want to trade away reputation for money. So we give them that same message that was given in the movie in terms of the Solomon situation, which is that not only do they behave in a way that conforms with the laws, but that they behave in a way where if a story were written by an unfriendly but intelligent reporter the next morning in their local paper, they would have no problem with their neighbors, their family, reading it. And we run that in the movie every year just because we like the managers to keep getting that message all of the time. There is no pressure from Berkshire's corporate office to report X dollars of earnings in any quarter. They don't give me budgets, so there's no feeling that they have to come through with given numbers or I'll be embarrassed in public in terms of publishing earnings or anything of the sort. We have no incentives to cause people to do anything that would go against their conscience or play games or cut corners or anything of the sort. And overall, I think it's worked pretty well. It isn't perfect. You can't have 250,000 people in the city without having something going on at some point, and we do have 250,000 people working. But I'm not unhappy with our batting average. Charlie?
Yeah, and of course, Fruit of the Loom does have foreign plants, and we have no rule against that at all. We've got quite a few foreign plants now. We don't favor foreign plants. We just do whatever makes sense under the circumstances.
Yeah, we had a shoe business I've written about in Maine, and we have wonderful, wonderful workers there. They were more productive than workers around the country, around the world. But the United States was producing 20 years ago roughly 1 billion pairs of shoes a year. And we were a nation of Imelda Marcoses. I mean, it was wild. And, you know, Brockton, Massachusetts, and you name the towns revolved around the shoe business, as did a town called Dexter, Maine. And we bought that business, and we tried to compete. We had a good brand name. We had great workmanship. And we found out that it just plain wouldn't work against competing against shoes produced in China. So now it's over 1 billion pairs of shoes a year used in this country. Basically, they all come from outside the borders, and you're going to see that. And factories in China, factories in Central America, they do not have exactly the norms that we have in this country, and you know, that's going to be the situation. You know, we are not going to tell the world how to run their business in any great way. Obviously we have some standards that have to be met, but they are not exactly the situation you're going to find in the United States.
Will commodity price increases in things like tungsten affect the profitability of ISCAR? And would that be the reason you're locating a plant in China to build machine tools? Thanks.
Yeah, the reason the plant was built in China was to serve the Chinese market, which is large and growing. And we opened in Dalian late last fall. It's nicer to be closer to the raw material, but it really had nothing to do with changes in the price of tungsten. Generally speaking, if you're creating a higher value added product, as ISCAR is doing from a raw material, there may be 3 months, 6 months of adjustment to changes in raw material prices. And obviously with some commodities, if it gets high enough, you get into substitutes. But there isn't going to be any substitute for tungsten in the cutting tools, and there won't be we've tried some substitutes for crude oil in terms of gasoline or not so heating oil, but then the substitutes like natural gas go up in price too. So I think largely in our businesses, raw materials get passed through. Now we're having a tough time, for example, in the carpet business in passing through the cost increases that we experience in oil-based raw materials. But we would be having trouble. We'd probably be having trouble in the carpet business regardless now because of the slowdown in residential housing. It does make it tougher. But over a period of time, our businesses are going to reflect raw material costs. This candy here, I have this fudge, which I can hardly wait to get into. It's going to reflect sugar and cocoa and things like that over time. And if you're running an airline, it's going to reflect the cost of fuel. So you can have little squeezes here and there, but it's not a big deal. And it certainly isn't the reason that we went to China to locate the ISCAR facility. That facility, incidentally, ISCAR, we have a number of people here from ISCAR and families in some cases. I had very high expectations for that when we bought it. It succeeded in every way. It succeeded in terms of financial performance. It succeeded in terms of the human relations we've developed with the people. I mean, I told you it was a terrific acquisition a few years ago. It's been a dream acquisition, and I know Charlie wants to add to that.
Yeah, I would say that the short answer is that while we don't like inflation because it's bad for our country and our civilization, that we will probably make more money over time because there is inflation.
Berkshire has bought a lot of shares over the last 12 months in listed companies. Do you expect the return on these investments to be between 7 and 10% per annum over many years, which is, I would say, well below what Berkshire has achieved in the past?
The answer to that is yes. We would be very happy if we could buy common stocks where our expectation over a long period pre-tax from a combination of dividends and capital gains. We'd be very happy if we thought it was going to be 10%, and we would probably settle for a little less than that. And there's no question, absolutely no question, that returns from owning Berkshire will be less in the future than they have been in the past. There's no question that we will not do as well with the common stocks at Berkshire that we own in the future as we have over the last really 40 years or thereabouts. We operate now in a universe of marketable stocks where we're talking about companies with market caps of at least 10 billion. In most cases, to have a meaningful impact on Berkshire, we're talking much bigger than that, maybe 50 billion and up. Well, that universe is not as profitable a universe to operate in as if you have the entire universe of thousands and thousands of companies. So if we just take an example, if we find a company with a market cap of 10 billion and we can buy 5% of it, and usually that's about what we could buy without disturbing things, we can have a $500 million investment. Let's say it doubles over a period of time. That's 500 million. You pay a 35% tax. You have 325 million. That's less than 0.2% in terms of Berkshire performance. So our universe has shrunk enormously, and we will not do as well in that universe remotely as well as we would if we were operating in a much wider universe and could do all kinds of things. We've found little things to do from time to time where we've made some money. I may refer to them a little later, a couple of things. And they're nice, but they don't move the needle very much at Berkshire. So anyone that expects us to come close to replicating the past should sell their stock. I mean, because it isn't going to happen. And, I think we're going to get decent results over time, but we're not going to get indecent results. And in this field, we prefer indecent, but we're not going to get them. Charlie?
I think you can take Warren's promises to the bank. We are very happy making money at a rate in the future that is way less than the rate at which we made money in the past. And I suggest that you adopt the same attitude.
Well, I wouldn't condemn him to that. I think if you're working with small amounts of money, I've talked to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then you may have something very much better to do with your money than to buy Berkshire. I mean, if you're working with small amounts of money and you want to put in significant amounts of time and examine thousands of securities, you will find things that are more intelligent to buy than Berkshire. We still think Berkshire is an attractive investment over a long period of time. We think that it stacks up reasonably well with other very large companies. We don't think it's the most attractive investment in the world in terms of what you can find if you're willing to go through those thousands of possibilities, which is what Charlie and I used to do many years ago. It's not feasible for us to do it now, and it wouldn't have any impact on Berkshire. What we really like at Berkshire is buying good-sized to very large first-class businesses with first-class management and just sitting there. Because the nice thing about that is you don't have to go from flower to flower. You can just sit there and watch them produce more and more every year and give you capital, and you can buy more businesses. That's a nice formula. It's a formula that will work, I think, for us. It won't produce returns like the past.